We'll go live on Facebook. I wish there was a live on Permies option there. Let's see here.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. Ethos. And I'm going to say, talk about fruit forests, swales, and Bitcoin. I'm at my dad's, so I hope the internet does well. We'll see.
I'm hoping for that too.
Yeah.
Hey, and if the internet does go crappy, you guys that can type where we can see, you got to tell us like who's fritzing out and who's not.
Yeah, Paul always wants to know, hey, everybody, welcome to Permaculture Smackdown. Today's episode is 39. So it's been 39 weeks, Paul. I was going through all the videos earlier today and counting them all and changing the names so that they include the episode number. So today we want to talk about some fruit forest stuff. We had Mitchell, or is it Michelle? Mitchell.
No, it's
Mitchell comment in the, so if you don't know, we have a pre-game show and an after-game show. So before the show and after the show, we talk with people that support the Paul Wheaton's Patreon, or if you're a Permaethos student, you get access to get into the chat room program we're using and ask us questions and stuff before the show, and we talk about stuff after the show that might not be politically correct or whatever.
Yeah. The stuff we don't want to have recorded.
Yeah. And anyway, so if you want to get in on that, just go head over to Paul's Patreon or to Permaethos and become a student, and we'll get you in. So today Mitchell said, hey, I want to talk about fruit trees. He's got a 4-acre oak forest and wants to put some fruit trees in. And so we're going to talk about that. We also wanted to talk about swales, and I think that ties in nicely with the fruit trees thing, and Bitcoin. So Paul, let's kick it off. You had some comments about orchards specifically. What do you got? What's your problem with orchards?
So Mitchell points out that he wants today's episode to be about fruit trees, and you already had a couple of things you wanted to talk about today, and I said, no, you know what, for our peeps, let's put them at the front of the line, and right. Because they're better than all the other people because they paid $1. So
yeah, I should mention it's easier to get in if you go through Paul's Patreon than because I don't have any courses that are $1. So Paul's Patreon is the cheapest way to get in.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate that. But he said fruit trees, and then we well, like what on fruit trees? Now we're waiting for him to reply on what do you mean by what angle? Then you and I start talking, and it's like because this is the Permaculture Smackdown. There's your dad. Yeah. Bear paw. Yeah, there he goes. There he goes. See him? There he goes. In the wild. So it does seem like the thing, the Smackdown is like we're trying to cover the harder topics, the more challenging, difficult, painful topics. And I think that the thing that is by far the most painful is when somebody says, I just bought land and it came with a 7. I'm so happy. It's so wonderful. It came with a 7-acre orchard. Yep. And it's like, oh, okay. Please have your question be about anything but that. And then they're like, what do I do? How do I make it a permaculture? And of course, there's a movie out called Permaculture Orchard.
Yes, how do you say his last name? Steven Swazwiak.
Well, and if you noticed who is in the when you're 7 seconds in, who's listed as the supreme executive producer with bacon, cheese, and sparkles? It's me. And so it's kind of like so there's the movie that's out there, and it's a lovely movie, and we have a podcast that's probably twice the length of the movie. Reviewing the movie, and of course the very first thing is that the phrase permaculture orchard is kind of a bit of an oxymoron. Now, there you go, look at that. And he does talk about what's...
Powiak. Sorry, Steven. I had him on PETV presentations, which you can find on our YouTube channel if you want to watch it. Anyway.
So it is a lovely, lovely movie. Definitely, folks should go buy it and things. I'm a little pissy because they don't put it up on the Permies.com digital market. But the important thing is that he is doing like every third tree is something else. So I think he does like an apple, a pear, and then a nitrogen fixer, and then over and over and over and over again. So that way it's not a monocrop exactly, and it's going to be there it is, yeah, the trio system. It's still still growing in rows, which is okay. He's got kind of an interesting thing there where it sounds like his water table is really low. But all right. Stepping away from that, nearly every time somebody says they have an orchard, it's a monocrop, and it's like you're gonna be just so infested with bugs and stuff. It's gonna be a mess, unless of course you spray the fuck out of it.
Well, that gets into, okay, so what are the steps? So, yeah, someone comes to you, they say, hey, I found a great piece of property. I just bought it. And it's got, 7 acres of orchard on it. And it's like, okay, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you got fruit trees on your property. Like, that's a positive thing. If I'm looking at property and it's got some fruit trees on it, I'm pretty excited. Hey, sweet. I don't have to wait for these things to become fruit trees. They're already there. Hopefully they live long. But there are, and I think most people coming to you or I about this understand that some things are going to have to change. It can't just be the existing orchard. Usually it's not going to be, usually it's going to be a monocropped orchard, and it's going to have some pest problems. So what are the first things that someone should be doing with their newly acquired monocropped orchard?
Okay. I think that the number one thing, and this is so much easier if we don't have an actual person who's about to tell me to fuck off, because they don't like my answer. They don't like what I'm gonna say.
Bear Paw's wife actually is here listening, and she owns an orchard.
Okay, so
she could tell us to fuck off.
She's gonna yell out here any second now. She's gonna yell out to fuck off. Okay. All right, there. Was that Tuesday?
Nope, that was Sandy.
Okay, that's Sandy. Okay, all right. So Sandy's got fuck off on her lips, ready to go, ready to launch. Doesn't even need an excuse.
No, I don't like orcharding.
So here's the first thing that I advise, and no one's gonna like the answer. You got to take out 90% of those trees. Now, if it's an orchard that's like, oh, it's a whole bunch of apples and apricots and pears and plums and it's like they're all different, only 10% of the orchard is an apple, and then the other another 10% is a pecan, and another 10% is pears, another 10%.
That's great. That's the goal. I mean, that's
then it's like that. That's fine. Generally not ever the case. Almost universally, it's like they're all apples, and they're not just apples either. They're Frankenstein apples. It's like every fucking one of them is put on some twisted, fucked up rootstock, and
or you'll see. Now, to clarify, we're not talking about, because sometimes you'll see like there's a couple of acres of apples, and then a couple of acres of pear, and then a couple of. We're talking about it being mixed.
And you still have that problem, It's like, so basically, the bugs learn that this is where the buffet is, because there's a lot of bugs that are just into apples, and there's a lot of funguses that are just into apples, lots of diseases that are just into apples, blight, And
you're not getting the predators. You're not getting nearly as many predators that would eat those bugs.
Well, and for most orchards, that's true, because they kind of want to keep the ground clean. And that's the other thing, too, is you get there and it's like there's no mulch, there's no understory, there's no polyculture. And it's like, so there's but the other thing, all right, there's there's so many little things, but the bottom line is that if you want to talk about, I mean, we could probably spend a few hours talking about food forests versus orchards, and why do we do this? Why do we go down this other path and whatnot? And how would we want to? But the bottom line is the biggest thing is that it's like, okay, over the next 3 years, you're gonna want to take out like 90% of your apple trees, and then on top of that, it's like whatever is in your orchard is probably something with some really stunted, fucked up rootstock. And so, and they've already probably been pruned in these weird, twisted, fucked up ways that they prune shit, because they're trying to get it all to stay so low that you don't have to get up on a ladder to harvest any of it. I'm not saying that I'm advocating getting up on a ladder to harvest any of it. In fact, I like what Fukuoka has to say in that it's kind of like, everything up to like 3 or 4 feet, that's for the animals to eat. And then everything that's from that point up to like 8 or 9 feet, which is like as far as you can go with a small ladder or, one of those diggy thing or one of those harvesting sticks. And then everything above that is winter feed for the animals. So I really like how he does it, but you eliminate 90% so that you don't have more than 10% of any single species. You're trying to develop not just a polyculture, but a polyculture of your trees and perennials. And it's like, okay, so we can go on for hours and hours and hours, but that's the beginning of it, is this idea. All right, what are you drawing?
I'm drawing a orchard. So the green would be apple trees.
Oh, okay.
Just so everybody gets the general idea. And maybe you can mix it up more.
So, all right. Now, Mitchell went on to say something about how he has 4 acres of oak forest. And I kind of feel like, okay, the next tidbit of advice I have is, first of all, those trees are probably going to be pretty damn tall. And any fruit tree that you're going to be putting in there is probably going to be pretty tiny. And I would like to suggest starting trees from seed instead of starting trees from a transplant. But that's one point where, like, I think the most people are going to give me is lip service on that one. Like, I only start trees from seed, and then you go to their place, it's all transplant. So, so moving past that, because I think it's going to be rare to find people. I mean, I think you got to be really at level 5 or 6 before you're going to start planting your fruit trees from seed. And most people who I bought an orchard, they're probably level 2, level 3, and so then that stuff just seems crazy. So I think what Mitchell's going to want to do is go to his southernmost edge and start clearing out 90% of those oak trees. And then that's going to open up the canopy a lot and make it so that you can get your other trees started. But you're going to want to, I think it would probably be good to come up with a long-term design and be looking at like sun scoops and food forest shapes. And I don't know how much slope there is, but maybe you're going to want to do some terraces here and there and stuff like that. And I think that, but some people are going to be like, oh, I got 4 acres, I'm going to do it all this year. And I'm thinking like, dude, half an acre a year, okay? Don't kill yourself on this. And do it. It'd be better to do a really lovely job than to do a rush job and it's all crap. But I would say, like, are you going to do Hugel cultures? Are you going to, what's going to be your bigger picture item? And then the first step is like take that half acre and, Ben makes a great point. In fact, I gave a presentation in Utah a few years ago, and this place right wherever you walk around, you're walking on like this 3-inch thick carpet of acorns. And and they're like, okay, well, we wanted to bring in some animals. We didn't want to get all the animals at once. So we brought in goats. And I'm kind of like, are you serious? You got 3 inches deep of acorns and you don't bring in pigs? it's like, this is Purina pig chow just lying on the ground everywhere. I mean, your pigs are going to get huge and delicious, and they probably aren't going to have to go more than 40 feet away from wherever you park their pen. Okay. You're already thinking about converting pig into bacon.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, but the thing is the question was fruit trees, and of course, permaculture has got like 10,000 different topics we can go into. And so what I want to say, I'm trying to think of some quick tips because I know Josiah really, really, really wants to get to Bitcoin, and
no rush.
So I kind of think that the thing to do is going to be do a 1/4 acre or a 1/2 acre really, really nice. And I think that you're going to want to make some designs for the whole property. And then you're going to make even better designs for this 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre you're starting with. Like, what do you want for sun scoops? If you've got some slope, how cold is it? Do you want to
fixers? There's water, making sure you have enough water. Which okay, so my thing is great. If you find a property that's got fruit trees on it, or even of an orchard, I think it's great. Yeah, you're gonna have to. There's work. You're gonna have to tear down a lot of trees. I agree with you. To get it to a food forest, you're gonna have to tear down a lot of trees. But all that material is usable for things like Hugel culture and mulching,
lumber.
Yep, lumber.
Redwood timber framing.
Yeah, so you've got a piece of property with a bunch of resources on it. That's awesome. Just understand that it's not going to probably be the resource that you were so excited about. But the resource that you were excited about is going to be there existing, and you can use it. Like you said, the 10%. Keep 10% of it. If it's all apples or whatever, keep 10% of the apples. That's great. Now, one thing that I don't like is that if I want to do swales and have my trees grown in swales primarily, then I can't do that because the trees have already been planted. If I do swales, I'm probably going to have to cut down a lot of the trees to put in the swales. The earthworks gets impeded. You're going to have to take out a lot to do the earthworks that are going to be needed because you're doing a fruit tree orchard or a food forest. Your food forest needs water, and you don't want to be irrigating externally or from a well, or doing that as little as possible. And to do that, to really do it properly, you're going to need earthworks, which involves tearing down a lot of that stuff. And some great earthworks are things like putting in Hugel culture beds, putting in ponds, putting in swales, putting in key lines. One popular thing that permaculture orchards, or you see permaculture orchardists doing, is putting in key lines above the tree lines, so that water is getting stopped there and pluming down underneath the trees to the roots, instead of just rushing off the property and taking the soil with it.
So there's some questions here about Julia's asking about good nitrogen trees for Oregon.
There's a guy named Johnny that sells some awesome apple seed trees, or apple seeds.
So,
sorry, Julia.
Just before I forget, there is a shrub that grows in Oregon and Western Oregon, Western Washington, that is a powerful nitrogen fixer, but it's got something more to it. In fact, it's really invasive. It's all over the place over there, and it's got a beautiful yellow bloom to it, and scotch broom. And
Julia said it when you did.
Yeah, there she's already typing up, and it's like
Scotch, like the drink, broom like the tool.
So, okay, not scotch like the people,
or them. Yeah.
So scotch broom has amazing properties and is a really wonderful, wonderful plant in so many ways. And a lot of people get to a property and it's just infested with Scotch broom, and so they're going to try and grow something else. The thing that I learned about Scotch broom is that it is treated as an invasive, and people want to spray the fuck out of it. And the thing that I learned about, I mean, first of all, it's an indicator plant for a lot of different stuff. But it once it gets started in a spot, it's like you will have a really hard time growing anything else in that spot. Its seeds have a lifespan of like over 50 years, and it drops prolific seeds. And so on top of that, the plant just keeps coming back, coming back, coming back. It is a survivor.
What does it flourish in? Is it loose soil, or is it hairnet root, or is it taproot?
I'm not sure if it has a taproot. I suspect it does. But it does really well, like on the sides of roads and stuff, and in unmaintained
soils.
I think it does not compete well with trees. So I have not seen very much of it in a place where there's trees, where there's like a full forest. Ben says it's toxic to ungulates. So now I think that that suggests that it might be allelopathic. And if it's allelopathic, then that's a whole different story.
He says it also attracts ladybugs, which can be a problem.
Well, ladybugs are generally a benefit. But I just want to say that, when it comes to Scotch broom, people are going to be tempted to plant it and encourage it. And I think that I'm going to say at one point in time I would have been a person advocating that. And at this point in time, I'm going to say my understanding is that like when the time comes that you're like, okay, now I don't want to grow Scotch broom, I want to grow all these other things, that it's like it's too late. It's over. This spot will only grow Scotch broom, and it'll only get bigger every year. I mean, if you want to not grow Scotch broom anymore, you've just inherited a pretty epic task. And so now there's things that you can do to mitigate it and stuff, and it's a nitrogen fixer. So, all right, the question that came back was, what are some nitrogen fixing trees to plant for Western Oregon, which is going to be different than Eastern Oregon. And that's going to be, so it's a fairly warmer climate. And number one thing on the list is alder. Alder is just magnificent as a nitrogen fixer over there. But, and of course, black locust is great. Some people try to say honey locust is good, but two big problems with honey locust. One is that it does not share nitrogen very well. It keeps it for itself, whereas a lot of the others are very generous, especially alder and black locust. Honey locust also, black locust has some pretty cool thorns. Nothing compares. I've never seen anything compare to the thorns on a honey locust tree. I think I used to always, hang on just a sec. All right, one of the great things about being a little bit famous is that people send me gifts. This is a honey locust thorn. It is beautiful and magnificent. Farmers used to use it for nails, and I mean, like, just look at this one thorn right here. I mean, doesn't this look like a lovely collection of nails to use for projects?
It also looks like a great way to keep things out of my yard.
It's a great way to deter trespassers. Yeah. Especially those on vehicles of any kind, but it also helps. It also tends to deter you from using a tractor within 100 feet of a honey locust tree. So I think a lot of people are not big fans of the honey locust.
Russian olive.
I think Russian olive is a really good nitrogen fixer. That is a fun one to plant, and it'll do really well on the interior, and it'll do well over on the west, on the coast as well. All right, so we've talked a little bit about fruit trees, and it's kind of like, And I'd like it if our people like made lists of the topics that they would like us to talk about, and we'll give them, we'll jump into those at the beginning of a Smackdown. And if people have particular things they want to talk about within the world of stuff we just talked about, then we can do that. And I'll knock Josiah over to make sure you guys are cared for.
What? I'm the one that said, yeah, let's do it. All right, so Mitchell says,
now you wanted to talk about
you're
swales.
great.
Yeah, I am great. I'm fucking awesome. Can you type out that I'm fucking awesome?
He wants it in writing from everybody.
But the other thing you wanted to talk about was swales.
Yeah.
And it's like, there it is. I'm fucking awesome. You're fucking awesome. This is great. So,
thanks for boosting his ego even more.
Yeah. As if I've got a self-esteem problem in that I have too much.
So Dana says, I would love more information on swales with a smiley face. So there you go. Okay, so let's talk about swales, and hopefully Dana will be like, I knew all that. This is what I want to know.
So out at Jeff Lawton's site, whatever it's called this week, I can't remember what it is, but for a while it was PRI, and then it was, and so anyway, Jack Spirko wrote something there, and he was like responding to dumb fuckery, and then he posted his essay on his, that is his response to dumb fuckery, and he caught a fuck ton of hate for what he wrote. And I'm sorry, Jack was right. And it's like, I support Jack, and anybody who says anything negative about what Jack wrote, I'm going to tell you, you're a dumb fuck. And it's posted on Jeff Lawton's site, and I'm pretty sure that Jeff Lawton will use a euphemism for the word dumb fuck. And so, but the key is that people were saying like, oh man, I read about swales. They're so awesome. And then I read about Hugel culture. Hugel culture is so awesome. I got this great idea. I'm going to do both. I'm going to do Hugel culture on contour. It's got both, man. It's the best. And it's like, no, that's stupid. That's dumb. That don't do that. You're not getting a twofer here. You're getting less than a halfer. And so, yeah, don't. Oh, he found it.
All right, so this is permaculturenews.org/author/Jack-Spirko.
Okay.
So this is all Jack Spirko's articles on Permaculture News.
Don't try building Hugel swales. There it is. In what is it? I'm looking at your happy smiling face. This is a very, and I mean very, bad idea. And I'm sorry, I support Jack on this. For all those people that are currently like yelling at their screens telling me that I'm a dumb fuck and that Jack's a dumb fuck and everybody else that they can yell at is they're all dumb fucks. And it's like, go ahead, yell, I can't hear you.
No, he's not saying swales are bad, and he's not saying Hugel culture is bad.
Correct.
Yeah. He's saying don't build Hugel cultures on, so in a swale, there's a mound of dirt on the downhill side. He's saying don't put wood in there and make that a part of the mound.
Well, okay. And he's got all the reasons in there, and the reasons are spot on. And the thing is that a swale is an awesome thing to build in a tropical or subtropical climate. And so basically, it's going to be a kind of like a leaky ditch on contour, and so you end up with like this long, skinny pond. And when it rains, it fills up, and then over the next week or two, it slowly, soaks into the ground, and it's got so many benefits. It's amazing and brilliant and smart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, when you build, and of course on the downhill side, you're going to grow lots of trees and stuff, and so then you end up with this big bunch of trees and shrubs and lovely, wonderful growies all in a row on contour. And then when the cold air comes down the hill and hits that, if you're in a tropical or subtropical climate, That's wonderful. All that cold air gets held there and cools it, so that way the plants don't get over hot, which commonly happens over there. And then as long as it's cooler, it retains more water, and it does better and better and better. But in a cold climate...
Now you're saying the wind, it's getting trapped in the ditch or against the mound?
I'm gonna answer your question with yes.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well,
so I mean,
because my next question, of course, is, well, Hugel culture is a mound, you know.
Right. And so I'm saying don't build. So like the thing that I emphasize is that you're going to build your Hugel culture beds in such a way that they're generally running up and down the hill. But even more than that, you know, rather than giving them straight lines like this is up and down the hill and this is up and down the hill, that instead give them weird curves and stuff like this. So that way, no matter which direction the wind is blowing, the wind can't get down between the Hugel culture beds. But at the same time, if there's any cold air mass, it'll just run down between the Hugel culture beds and keep going down. It won't build up and accumulate. You should imagine like cold air masses are like 6 feet wide and gelatinous and going downhill. So now if you've got a swale and it's captured water, and then on the downhill side of the swale, then it's got a whole bunch of trees and shrubs that are like 20 feet tall, then that cold air mass is going to hit that and pile up behind all those trees and shrubs, as well as the mound. And it's going to make things colder there, which in subtropical climates is great, but in cold climates, not what we're looking for, really. Now, I do think that it's possible that, like, let's say you've got 5 acres. You might have like a half an acre somewhere that's got a swale and a Hugel culture bed on contour. And then right there on that spot, yeah, always cold. Great place to go and have a picnic in early spring when things haven't quite warmed up enough yet. No, wait. Great place to have a picnic in July, late July, when it's just cooking. Then you can go there and it's like, man, it's like 15 degrees cooler right here. And we're still in the sun. This is nice.
Now, there are things you can do to mitigate those pockets of air, right? To warm things up in those areas.
So, for example, what you could do is like have these 10-foot wide gaps between the trees, and that'll make it so that the cold air keeps going over the swale and continues on down. So it's a little bit like Sepp Holzer's terraces. So Sepp Holzer will do terraces that are not exactly on contour, a little bit off of contour, but he kind of does them a little bit like this. And the idea is that the terraces themselves help to hold on to water and stuff, and helps hold soil up there and everything like that. But where it's lower, then that's going to be a little bit wetter, and where it's higher, that tends to be a little bit drier. So there's a little bit of that. But at the same time, you got to still have your openings, so that way that cold air can just keep going right on down the hill. You don't want it to stick around.
And so there are areas where you might want that to happen. Just understand the effects, I think, is the big message. Because you might want to put a swale in Montana because you want some cold pocket for some reason. But understand that it's going to be cold there. And in Montana, it's cold a lot. So if for some reason you need a cold area in the middle of summer, that would be something to do.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that Hugel culture is really a powerhouse in cold climates, because in cold climates you can build soil. You like when you build a Hugel culture bed, all those microbials are going to go out there and they're going to work their asses off on that wood like 4 to 5 months out of the year, and the rest of the year they're relatively dormant. Whereas in a tropical or a subtropical climate, they're going to work much, much harder all year long. And it's like, so your Hugel culture bed tends to not last very long. It tends to decompose quickly. And that's also a place where biochar is great. That'd be a great Smackdown topic, is let's go and give biochar the kick in the nuts it currently needs. And it's like, so biochar is great in tropical and subtropical climates. But a lot of that's because Hugel culture just isn't going to last in a tropical or subtropical climate.
Okay, so now the whole point of swales, technically is tree growing system. It's meant to be a great system for trees to grow in. And a lot of that has to do with the plume of water, because it's pluming water down into the soils. So you maintain water in your soils. So one important aspect of that is don't do it at steeper than 15 degrees. Like 15 degrees is the maximum slope that you want to put swales in it. You do not want to go at a steeper slope than that, because you'll get slides. There's a big risk of the soil, just because all that water is pluming under the soil, there's a big risk that soil at steep slopes just falling off your mountain or your slope. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Another thing to think about is if you are in a colder climate and you still want that long contour kind of system that will maintain water, key lines are something that you can look at. And with key lines, oftentimes you're on a larger piece of property that's got like ridge lines. And those ridge lines end up with drier. They end up drier because they're not getting most of the water. It runs off of them a lot quicker. And so key lines are great because you can tilt them more towards those ridges and send water to those ridge lines, or something to think about. But what do you think about that, Paul?
I mean, key line is a broadacre technique. Mm-hmm. And so, before I forget, we've got like 2 days left before for the early bird price for the PDC and ATC here at Wheaton Labs. And the focus for the PDC is on homesteading, which means that there's going to be a reduced amount of information for broadacre techniques or urban techniques. Definitely focused on people that have like 2 to 200 acres. Yeah. Probably averaging like people that are more like 5 to 10 acres. So for the homesteaders, this is the PDC.
And the early bird special is a huge discount. Like, get it now. You got 2 days to get it.
Hundreds of dollars discount. Yeah. So there's only like 2 days left. Do it now before you forget, kind of a thing. All right. Keyline is a great broadacre technique. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like when people talk to me about, like I've gotten this question, I don't know how many times, like, okay, I've got 20,000 acres. How do I do permaculture on that? And it's like, okay, you're asking me, so I'm going to give you my answer. I'm not, if you want, we can go and explore all the answers from like Alan Savory and P.A. Yeomans and stuff like that. But my answer is to divide it into a bunch of 200-acre chunks, put one person in charge of each 200 acres, but there's going to be like 20 people or so living on that 200 acres.
Right. And
then each person kind of has their own little zone 1 and zone 2 and zone 3 on that 200 acres. And so you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to have 20,000 acres, and I'm going to grow all kinds of organic food that I'm going to sell on the commodity market, which is another thing I want to discourage. But this is usually how the question is presented to me. And so how do I do commodity market food on 20,000 acres? So then there's that thing with 200 acres, somebody's in charge of it, and then there's like 20 other people on that 200 acres. And you're going to have all these 200-acre plots, bunches of them. And then you're going to say to all these people, like, okay, a semi-truck is pulling up at the main office on Tuesday. The truck will arrive at 9 a.m. and it will drive out of here at noon. And so we need to load everything up. We need to get it all on pallets and load it up and into that truck full of tomatoes. And I just made that up. It could be anything, whatever. And so then basically each 200-acre chunk needs to come up with their boxes of tomatoes, which then get transported to the semi-truck, which then it gets loaded into it. As opposed to, okay, you got, more conventional thing is like, okay, we happen to be growing 500 acres of tomatoes all in rows and monocrops, and we're going to get people out there picking tomatoes like crazy for the day before to get ready for the semi-truck that was going to be there that particular day. So my approach is more like I want to move people towards effectively girtitude. And it's like when you're a girt and you're managing something like 5 to 10 acres, then I want to believe that your food forest systems and your zone 3 and your zone 4 stuff, at no point in time does keyline work. You know, it's like you'd much rather be doing Hugel culture systems and terraces and food forests and things like that. And then at no point in time is there an easy way to get a tractor in there with a keyline plow on it. Because when we're saying keyline today, we're talking about exactly what you're talking about with the keyline plow. Mm-hmm. Whereas the people that really love keyline start saying, like, you know, that's just a tiny little part of keyline. Permaculture stole all of our other stuff, you know, all the ponds and everything. They took all of that and they just left us with this. They say, oh, keyline, that's that plow thing over there. And it's like, so, all right. So when we're just talking about that keyline plow thing, great broadacre technique. I wish to encourage people more towards girtitude.
And for those doing the broadacre kind of stuff, I'm going to clear this out. Here's kind of how I like systems to look. So we'll say you have a field, like you need to produce crops. That's a lot of farmers need to produce crops. And so instead of just planting a huge field full of these monocrops, there's some other things you can do that are nice to do. So you have your rows. So instead of a big field, make some rows. Like that's the first step. So instead of one big field, put in some trees. That's what the rows are. Trees, and try and keep a lot of variety of trees, a lot of nitrogen fixers, like as diverse as possible, because you're not being diverse in the center here. In between the tree rows, you're being monocropping because you want to make a big profit on. I'm not saying this is the best way to do things. I'm just saying that this is a great way for those that are monocropping to transition. This is a great way this will really help you a great deal and hopefully lead you down a better path. So you have your big crop. Now, if you can, in between these rows, do different crops. Do like tomatoes, wheat, whatever your crops are, do a bunch of different crops in between rows. But I know that a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want one product or whatever. So you have your you create these rows, and you have in between each field, you have your rows of trees, nitrogen fixers, etc., as much diversity as possible. Now, where keyline comes in, a great way for keyline to come in, we'll say the slope is running this way, is to put your key lines, I'm going to use a different color. You cut your key lines right here. On the uphill side of each of those rows of trees. And so what that's going to do is help mitigate your soil erosion. The trees will do that, and so will your key lines. The key lines are going to help the water stay on the soil, on the property, and all that soil, because you got a shitload of loose soil, all that soil is going to stop at the key line and these berms with the trees and build up here. So that means every year you're probably going to have to recut this key line, maybe every couple of years. Just come in with the plow, your key line plow, and cut a key line into those rows above the trees, the tree lines. But it's just one thing that could do you a great deal of good on your field. Paul, you look skeptical, or you can't see it. You need glasses.
No, I do not like what you just drew.
Okay.
I need to now shit all over your presentation.
Get all over it.
Do I get to? Well, okay. I think I can do this with the English language. What's that?
You can draw if you want.
Can I?
Or will your drawing just be a big X?
Oh, look, there's a Q&A thing. I gotta pull up the little Q&A window.
Yes,
okay. okay, here's the thing: is it's going to be extremely rare because keyline systems are based on contour. I mean, the idea is that you're going to go off contour a very exact way, a very exact amount
for the ridge lines.
And so it's kind of like you're kind of assuming that the line that you're going to have for your keyline line is going to just so happen to be right along the edge of your orchard lines here.
It is,
by the way,
because that's where you're planting your trees.
Which, by the way, keyline and trees do not get along.
Ooh.
Think about it.
Ooh, I don't know. Okay, I'm thinking about it.
Okay, because trees have these things called roots.
Yeah.
And then your keyline eats those roots. Chompity, chomp, chomp, chomp. Which then makes your trees sad. And so then you're like, stop being fucking sad. I just gave you keyline. You're supposed to be happy. And the trees aren't buying into it.
Yes, I agree. You don't want, so there's a reason I didn't put the line like right here along that row. It's out to the side because your tractor is going to come in. I'm going to undo that, or undo, yeah. Your tractor's coming in. This is a tractor's width. And so your plow is on the outside. So your tractor is going to come along these trees. So you're already driving out a ways from the trees because of the branches. And then you have your tractor's length and you're cutting in on that line. So you do lose space. You're losing your space of crops because you have a road, essentially. I wouldn't call it a road, but it's a path in between your key line and your trees. And your trees should be, yes, along contour or along where your key lines are going to go.
Give me a drawing tool. How do I draw?
I think you just click whiteboard or annotate.
Annotate. Oh, here we go. Draw. Okay, I'm going to do a little doodle over here. Okay, here we go. Now, you've got this big line up at the top that shows where the slope's going, right? So my guess is that your contour line is oftentimes going to be like this. And then that means, and now how do I'm trying to like, this looks like color. So I'm going to do a yellow line. And that means that, like, if your ridge is down this way, then that means that your key line is going to be kind of like this.
I'm not seeing it. I saw there it goes.
All right. And then, I mean, the thing is that if the top is your gully and the bottom is more like your ridge, then the idea is to have a slight downhill that goes slightly downhill of contour. So that way, if any water comes up here, can you see where I'm pointing?
No.
No. Okay. If any water comes in at the top and it hits your keyline thingamabob there, then it'll go into the little keyline micro ditch and carry it out towards the ridge by going slightly downhill.
Yeah.
The thing is that where these lines are going to be based on contour, not based on where you put your orchard lines, which is going to generally be determined on straight lines because you can get your tractor in there to mow and shit.
No, it doesn't have to be on straight lines because you want the width of your. You want the width.
You think your orchardist kind of did everything based on like, oh, later I'm going to come in here and do keyline shit?
What I'm talking about is the person who has a field. They're monocropping. I'm like saying, okay, we need to do a design on your field. Here's what I suggest you do.
Oh, man, I'm getting a stomach ache listening to you talk about this. I'm sorry, Josiah. I want to support everything you say. At the same time, it's like, I guess this is why people hate me so much, is it's like, I gotta tell you, it's so frustrating. So
what I'm
going to bring you guys
your plant, you're going to design, right? You're going to design your key lines out so you know where you want the water to go on your ridge lines. And your tree system needs to follow that. And the rows in between each of these tree lines need to be wide enough for your tractor to do 1 or 2 passes. Usually 2, like 1 and then turn around and go back. Okay,
so I have visited hundreds of orchards. I've seen pictures of hundreds of orchards. My understanding is that they universally don't give a fuck about contour, and they universally are a collection of straight lines based generally on, and what they do is they try to optimize harvest.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, because that's time sensitive. It's like, we got to get in there and harvest and get out. And it's like, we have a hard time. We've got too many people that are working here during the non-harvest season. And then we can never have enough people during the harvest season. So it's really, everything's all optimized for harvest. And it's like, so those lines, those orchard lines have nothing to do with contour. The next thing is that it's like, and keyline is all about, where is your contour line? And we're going to go slightly downhill of that to carry water out towards the ridges, like what you're talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so it's like those two they're always going to be different. They're always going to be different. Unless you're like designing to do keyline and then plant an orchard after you do keyline.
I'm not talking about doing keyline with an orchard. What I'm talking about doing is a field, like a field of crops. I'm saying, hey, person that has a huge field of crops, it would be really smart of you to put in trees.
Okay.
And I understand you still need to harvest your field of crop, and so this is a way to do it.
Okay, so you're talking about, they have a field, and then you want to go in there and do the keyline stuff, and after you're all done with the keyline stuff, then you're going to start planting trees,
mm-hmm.
and you're going to plant them kind of swale-esque on contour or on keyline or something like that.
Right. Well, along the key line, not the contour, because the key line is going to be slightly off contour. You're not going to
slightly off contour. Right. Okay, I see your point, and I think that is a pretty good idea for tropical and subtropical climates.
Ooh, I think it's a good idea in like eastern United States, Iowa, those kind of places that have tons of those fields.
I think that once again, if all those trees do really great on your contour, on your keyline lines, then they kind of have, they've created something that's a bit like a frost pocket. Now, even more than that, I mean, we're back to talking about broadacre techniques.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I wish to discourage broadacre. I think that, and that's like, but and granted, there are challenges. There are serious challenges. Like I talked earlier about, there's a dude. He has 200 acres, and I shouldn't say dude. It's a person. It could be male or female. So there's somebody who has 200 acres, and they've got 20 people on the 200 acres with them, and it's kind of like, all right, how do you get that all to work out without people stabbing each other? Granted, number one problem that has to be sorted out, and I'm working on it. I could really use a lot of help on this front. Not from people telling me what a dumb fuck I am, because I got plenty of those people. But I would really, honestly, sincerely, I need people to come here and be part of our projects and part of what we're trying to pull off here. And granted, I make it almost impossible for everybody. The moment I say no smoking and no pot, that eliminates 98% of the people who want to come out here. So, but I'm trying to, okay, let's have that last 2%. Boy, I could sure use some help here with this project. Now, granted, some people are going to be, for whatever reason, they don't want to come. They've got a life of their own or whatever. Hey, come on down, and build some kind of spec permaculture home. And I've got people who want to come here and live here, but they want to move into a turnkey permaculture system. please come over here, build some turnkey permaculture stuff, and sell it. Make money. I hope you get rich. All right, I'm going off.
I really like the idea I had of the upgrade. Come and build the turnkey stuff, and if you're that kind of person, that person I'm looking for, that awesome person that will build awesome shit on the property, I will give you an upgraded property so that I can get, and then you can go do that on the bigger property so I can get other people onto that property that you just built.
And hey, there's a couple of properties right next door to mine that are for sale. So, if people want to, and I love the idea of like, couldn't there be like 15 properties all right next to each other that are all into permaculture? And we kind of start to build this permaculture utopia, each with a different flavor right next to it. All right, but I am so passionate and so bonkers about this gratitude idea, and the idea that, there would be one person who has a 200-acre chunk, and then there would be 20 people that are also living on there, and because of reasons, and I think I've got a pretty good recipe for people to stab each other less than many of the other recipes, and so then I kind of feel like I'm on to something here. I just need people that want to come out and be experimented upon, in the sense of experimenting on human beings, and the experiments being flavors of community. But in all seriousness, I would very much like to get a lot more people out here. I mean, like 20 or 30, and that
says I'm in the 2%. There you go. You got one.
All right, one. And so
right away, right off the bat.
Come on down. With the schmoozeroo and the peasant PDC, I kind of feel like that's to help jumpstart our community mission here.
Yeah, there's some great land where you're at too.
I'm trying to say, like, I'm in the middle of trying to crap all over what you're saying.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Crapping.
Okay. Okay. So the thing I'm trying to say is, like, I do wish to discourage the use of keyline systems, especially around trees. And then, granted, I get what you're saying about, like, okay, you're starting with a plot of land that doesn't have any trees on it yet. And it's like, oh, great. And if we're going to have that be, like, within somebody's zone 2 or 3, rather than keyline, how about Hugel culture beds?
Sure.
Or berms and stuff like that. Especially if we're in a cold climate like I am, I want berms and Hugel culture, and I want windbreaks, and I want I want all of that stuff instead of keyline.
Yeah.
And keyline is a great idea if it's like, okay, we've got 5,000 acres of broadacre and there's not very many trees on it, and we want our growies to be a little lusher without as much irrigation. And you can see the pictures where it's taken right at that perfect time of year where the keyline stuff is just barely still green, and the stuff right next door that hasn't had keyline done to it is well on its way to being, brown and dormant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, so keyline on that particular plot, keyline bought you like an extra week or two of keeping wetness in the fields. And there's other examples, other brilliant examples of keyline, all of them broadacre.
Yeah.
And so yeah, PA yeomans, or there's tons of people that are keen on keyline, and then of course there's all these people you can talk to that are going to tell you that what their recipe is for broadacre, but I'm here and I'm an obnoxious fuck, and so I'm saying do it my way, which I learned this technique from Sepp. Sepp will not talk about anybody else's techniques. Sepp will only talk about Sepp's philosophies and techniques.
Right. I agree. Like, ultimately, you what you want is what I want ultimately, and I think if it wasn't, we wouldn't get along too well. But I am thinking that I really want to help transition people that are doing monocropping, that are doing these huge broadacre projects. I really want to transition them towards that ultimate goal, and certainly trying to alienate them and saying, you got to stop monocropping and stop doing what you're doing, stop your livelihood and do it this way isn't going to work. But what could work is say, hey, you can do it this way, which is a step towards that, a transition towards that. And there's benefits that you're going to still be able to profit off of. And I think that it's just a nudge. It's just nudging them a little more towards the permaculture side than you know, pointing your finger at them and making them afraid of permaculture people.
Now, before we jump onto Bitcoin, and I know we're really low out of time, but I promise I'm going to give you all the Bitcoin time you want if you let me just. So Brian asks, how much per acre is property in Paul's area? Oh, that's a different question. I thought he was asking a different question. I should look at these things more carefully. And so the answer to that is that in like if you want to buy land like next door to me, you're looking at $1,000 to $2,000 an acre, depending. And so definitely, you know, encourage. And there, that's going to be like for 100 acres or better. If you try to get smaller plots, like a 5-acre plot or a 10-acre plot, price per acre goes way up. Somebody next door to me just bought 40 acres, and I think that they had to spend something like $3,000 an acre. So there's a 200-acre plot that's near me. In fact, there's a 100-acre plot that's near me, and its price I think is like $1,300 per acre, something like that. And it's right next. It's adjoining land.
Yes, Josh, Ridgedale. Yeah, so Richard Perkins is doing very much what I'm talking about. If you understand that, he's talking about Ridgedale permaculture in the chat.
So the thing I want to answer the question I thought Brian was asking, which he wasn't, which is like, how much is an acre on Wheaton Labs?
Oh, okay, yeah, much different.
Yeah, and it's like you don't own it. It would be kind of a rent for life thing, and so we call it deep roots. It's $21,000 for 1 acre, but you have access to the full, 200 acres as well. So if you want to run cattle, you can do that. Whereas
if you hate Paul or Paul hates you, it ends up just not working out. There's options to get out selling, right? Yeah. There's options, but I mean, and I've got something half written. I got to post it, and it's like graceful exit. If you choose to not do graceful exit, then it's you might lose your investment. But we've got the boot camp right now where people can come and just be in the boot camp for the experience of it, which is what most people do. And some people want to, if you do enough time in the boot camp, we'll trade you a ticket to an event. Or we'll do, if you're here for 2 years, we'll give you an acre of deep roots. But the other thing is that we just recently announced is the idea of 4 months, and you'll get an acre from now through the end of 2019. If you do 4 months in the boot camp. So I think that's pretty damn cheap for an acre. And then the rent for that acre is going to be, we've got a kind of a hybrid price right now. I'm not sure what it would be in 2020. But currently for 2019, the price is $1,600/$1,800. So if there are two things, if you do one of the two things, it's $400 off of your plot rent. If you do both of those things, it's $800 off. And so then your rent for the year is just $800 a year, which I think is a sweet ass deal. But I also kind of think that the whole, like right now, if you want to get an ant plot, it's $900 for the year to take you through the end of 2018. I think that's a pretty sweet deal. But so what does that convert to in Bitcoin?
All right. I do want to, as long as there was a thing that I suggested that we talk about today, and you said we could talk about it next week. And that is this very provocative question where somebody wrote and said, who wants? And they said 10,000, but it's not 10,000. It's 21,000. Who wants to buy something for $10,000 if an evil dictator can repossess it at a whim? They are unprotected. And so then here is my response. The thing is, it turns out there are some people that are totally fine with parting with coin for land from this evil dictator that can repossess it at a whim. I think I've demonstrated that my whim has a mountain of patient communication to try to resolve stuff. And I think each of these is supposed to start with the thing is, because she started with the thing is. So the thing is, this whim makes it so that if your next door neighbor turns nasty, then the whim becomes a nastyectomy. The thing is, this repossess at a whim is pretty much the exact same scenario as most any other rental scenario. The thing is, it is rare to find a situation where you can listen to hundreds of podcasts, watch hundreds of videos, and read hundreds of essays from the whimmer. The thing is, sure, there is the whim thing, but at the same time, there is the freaky cheap thing, thus making it worth it. The thing is, for some folks, they will come, try it on for size, after a few years decide to move on, so they sell their improvements and maybe even arrange the sale of their deep roots. They might come out ahead on the whole thing. It kind of reminds me of the guy that was so upset. He was here for 2 years. He parted with a total of $800 for his 2 years. And so it's kind of like, and then he sold all of his improvements. It kind of seems to me, which I think he sold all his improvements for $900. I think he could have gotten a couple of thousand if he tried, but he didn't try. He was like, I want my money right now, and I'm going. So basically, he got paid $100 to live here. I mean, so, all right. The thing is, for some folks, they like the idea of pushing this project forward. So maybe they come for a while, build some things, sell their improvements, come out dollars ahead, and the whole project has moved forward. I fully suspect that billions of people will find this arrangement utterly unacceptable, but I'm not looking for billions of people to come here. I'm looking for a few dozen. Further, I think that there are a lot of people out there that are bonkers about this exact flavor of permaculture, and looking for their own land is too expensive, and other communities are not a fit for them. It turns out this community is an excellent fit and damn cheap to boot. This situation is for that rare person that fits all these bits and bobs. All right, now I'm going to go read the comments.
I would like to say one thing that you didn't cover in there is that this tyrannical dictator is a very public person. Like, you're joining this program not as a Permies company, you're joining the Paul Wheaton experience, the community with Paul Wheaton. He has his reputation on the line. He's very public. Lots of people know him. Lots of people read about him. And so if he were to fuck over people, he would get a huge kick in the nuts to his reputation. And that would hurt his overall business for a lot of things. And so there's your motivation. That's why, or that's one of the risk mitigations for you, is that if this guy does fuck up, it's going to hurt his reputation a great deal.
I think I have to authentically fuck up. I mean, some people have tried, and it turns out that their stuff was empty.
Yeah.
You know, but all right. So I hope to see some stuff in the chat about how, these terms would work for them. Somebody put a picture in here, and it's hard to scroll. Like, there's something about the picture that's making it want to not scroll correctly.
It's a picture of Ridgedale Permaculture.
Okay.
His key lines and the system I was talking about, and not a shitty drawing, an actual over picture of his property instead of my shitty drawing.
So Terry is saying that he fights with pesticide drift from his neighbor. And it's like, I don't know how many times I've heard that story where somebody's like, what do I do? My neighbor does, pesticides. And yeah, there's the picture. That's Richard Perkins. We talked about him in the Smackdown before. He does amazing stuff.
Yeah, we covered one of his videos.
Yeah.
And people thought we were negative towards it. I'm like, what? We like him.
No, we really like Richard Perkins. Okay, now I've said my thing. I feel so much better. Now let's talk about Bitcoin.
Man, we're already 10 minutes past the hour.
No, I promised you I was going to talk about Bitcoin. I'm in. I'm doing it.
I have to go record a podcast with this guy, Jack Spearcow. Okay, we'll cover. Here's what I'll do: is I'll briefly cover it, give people some reading material, so that we can, when we have future conversations, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right. So, Jeff Lutton sent out a newsletter, and it said, this was on March 12th. It says Bitcoin betrayed with a question mark. Bitcoin has been in the news quite a bit. I am not an economist, but I am deeply skeptical and quite concerned about where this is all heading. To offset some of the breathless and euphoric prophecies being made, I'd like to share this thoughtful critique I came across titled How Bitcoin Ends, which is this article I've got pulled up. He's got quotes. Bitcoin was intended to break the monopoly of the banking system and over central current Bitcoin was intended to break the monopoly of the banking system over central currency and credit, but in the end, it will turn into just another platform for the big banks to do the same old extraction they always have. Here's how, and that's where this article came in play. And here's a more personal, antiquated account that draws a similar pessimistic conclusion, which is this article. What I'll do is I'll copy this and put it in the chat room for everybody. So that's this article is the second one he's talking about. Come on. Okay. So now, if you would like, go ahead and read those articles. And I will tell you right now that I disagree with a lot of what these articles are saying. I feel like they're not fully understanding Bitcoin or the potential for Bitcoin, or more realistically, cryptocurrencies, and the potential they have to do what we want them to do. It's really going to come into some deep conversation here for quite a bit.
All right.
So I'm thinking it'd be best if we save this for another time. Here are my kind of the three things that I really want people to think about when they're reading these articles. Think about the Civil War, because believe it or not, most people think that war was about something it wasn't. The primary reason for the Civil War was currency. It was a currency war. And think about the energy and the environment and how Bitcoin benefits the energy and environment, or energy uses and our environmental uses, and how these articles are trying to say Bitcoin hurts those. And then also think about why it would be bad if smart people gained Bitcoin. Like, why are they saying that it's a bad thing smart people are getting so much Bitcoin? Those are my comments.
I just want to real quick jump in and say, currently we do everything on the dollar, which is based on nothing. It's just air money. And so, all right, so we got this dollar, and the only reason why it's of any value is because other people have determined that it's a value. It's exactly the same as Bitcoin. Only the people that manage the dollar, when Bitcoin came out, they kind of thought, it's a novelty, it's stupid, nobody cares, nobody's going to touch it. Then suddenly people started to groove on it, and Bitcoin started to have a lot of value. So then they hired PR firms to go out and say Bitcoin is bad, okay? And so I think what we're reading here is the people who own the dollar, which is not the government, the people who are trying to protect their interests. Like, no, don't look at Bitcoin. Stick with the dollar for reasons. And it's like so there's some of that. I have Bitcoin because over a year ago, somebody gave me like $5 in Bitcoin, and then somebody else, one of the aunts, paid their rent in Bitcoin, and then somebody else wanted to support my Kickstarter, and they sent the funds in Bitcoin, and I just left it there.
And if you want PDC, HEC, PPDC, you can buy with Bitcoin. You have a Bitcoin wallet ID down there.
Yeah, I'm all set up to receive more Bitcoin if people want to pay for it. And it's kind of like, so I had like, I don't know, $800 in Bitcoin, maybe $600. I mean, had something like that. And then at the beginning of the year last year, and then suddenly I go to look at my account and it says, you have $17,000 now. And it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. And then I thought, well, then I'm going to spend some of it, because I have so much. And then that's when it got really kind of weird with the way my wallet is set up. My Bitcoin wallet is set up. And I ended up not spending it. So it's all still there. And
it's doing this.
I think so as I read all this stuff, I kind of get the idea, well, it's unregulated, which is probably a good thing. And I know that people are doing a lot of stuff where they're doing bump and slump, where they're like trying to like buy heavy all at once, like when it gets down to a little bit low, and then all their friends will all buy, and then 6 hours later sell, and then make lots of money doing that kind of thing. And so it's like, I guess they can do that. And so you watch the Bitcoin price go up and down because people are playing that game.
Oh, yeah. Or you have things like some news organizations shitting on Bitcoin, and then when the stock goes down, buying it.
Yeah. So, I think an important thing is that there's nothing behind it, just like how there's nothing behind the dollar. However, there's more security and there's a distributed factor. So like if somebody blew up one of the computers that manage it, it's so distributed it will make really no difference. It's resilient like the internet is resilient. And so it's like those are, and really if you're bothered by it anyway, don't buy it. And then I don't know. I think it's cool. And I think Jack is a big proponent of it, but I haven't heard all of Jack's stuff on it. I don't really know, but it's like I don't see why there's so much interest in, like, I think that what we're seeing is the corporate trolls railing against it, and I kind of get the impression that Jeff bought into what the corporate trolls had to say. And it's like that, which is fine. You get to buy into that if you want. I just think that I think that's what's going on. I think that Jeff's buying into what the corporate trolls have said, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, what's unfortunate is in this article that they're targeting Bitcoin as a environmental destruction, and it's totally not. Totally not.
In fact,
but it's definitely directed to like poke at the hearts of people that care about the environment.
Yeah, for now. And then they're gonna change their tune and say, buy. I bought Bitcoin. I wanted to go way up. And then I'm gonna sell you another scary story. Oh, it's bad. Sell it now because I'm selling it now, and I want the price to go back down so I can buy some more and pump and dump and pump and dump and pump and dump. And so it's like sure there's some of that. I mean when I received Bitcoin, it was valued at about $400, and I think now it's hovering around $10,000.
It's below 10,000 now, I think.
Yeah, whatever.
But, yeah.
And I'm sure it'll bounce up and down and whatever. But they're going to try and tell you that no, Bitcoin is bad and evil because they've got their reasons to tell you that. And I mean, things have just become this big thing where it's all about what people learn from their limited media stuff, and they're so influenced. But I think that Bitcoin is a silly little thing, and it's like, yeah, if you bought into the silliness at the right time, overnight you're a millionaire. You bought a lottery ticket and it paid off. And
I don't think of it that way. Well, I mean, surely there was some of that, for sure. But there was a lot of smart people who got into it early because they understood currencies, the way currencies work, and realized that this has the potential to be huge, and I can get in real cheap right now. It's like it's almost like being able to understand what Apple could do in the future, or what Microsoft could do in the future, and buying the stock early. It's just smart people get a hold of it. And people are saying, well, it's just, we're back to the same old, corporations controlling all the money. And it's like, well, those are smart people. It's not like corporations are formed around smart people. Smart people started corporations. And there's a lot of smart people that are bad people, but there's also a lot of smart people that are good people. But in general, they're smart. Usually it's a fairly high IQ person that it takes to run a corporation. And yeah, they get in early to things like, so that's why you kind of want to admire them and watch them and see what they're getting into because they're probably getting into something pretty smart.
All right. So Josiah, what do you think is going to be right now? The price of Bitcoin's 10,000. What do you think?
It's just over 9,000.
Okay. What is going to be the price of Bitcoin in December? What do you think?
You can't speculate it.
Okay. All right. Fair
Too
enough.
volatile right now. I mean, there's just so much. There's countries saying no Bitcoin. We are making it illegal in our country, and that makes the price go crazy. And because governments hate it, governments do not want Bitcoin. They are trying to find ways of using Bitcoin because it's becoming so popular. Trying to find ways of taxing Bitcoin. Because it's becoming so popular. But they do not like the idea of them not being in control of a currency. But I think it is inevitable. Whether it's Bitcoin or some other currency, decentralized currencies are the thing people want and are looking for, and that's what Bitcoin is.
I think it's probably going to go over 50,000
by December.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll go that high that quick, but I do think, ultimately it's going to be worth, a Bitcoin in the end could be worth $10 million. Oh, yeah. It has the potential to go as high as you could want it to go. Eventually what it'll be is that Bitcoin's worth a Bitcoin because it'll get rid of, they'll be like, yeah, US dollars are shit or they don't exist anymore. Bitcoin's worth a Bitcoin. But there's a limited amount of Bitcoins that exist. So people can talk about it in comparison to gold, but it's like, well, gold wasn't exactly the same because gold didn't have a limited amount. We don't know how much gold there is. You can keep mining it, people can find it. We know exactly what the limit is on Bitcoin. So the big environmental concern that they bring up is harvesting Bitcoin, which is mining it. Yeah. And that takes up so much energy. It takes a lot of electricity and things like that to mine it. And what happens when all of it's been mined? Well, there's a great possibility that it either won't all get mined or it's going to take a long time before it's all mined. Because the more Bitcoin that gets extracted out of the total amount there is, the harder and harder it gets to extract it. The less you get from extracting. And so they're sucking up more and more energy to do this. Well, if it's too expensive it costs a lot of money to suck up to mine this Bitcoin because energy costs are so high. What do you think smart people are going to do about that? Just give up and quit? Or are they going to just spend a lot more money on electricity and not get as much value out of their Bitcoin that they're so preciously mining? Or are they going to say, how could I get free energy or much more cost-effective energy like solar to power these machines that are harvesting Bitcoin? And so then you have a boom of industry into the alternative energies, which is a good thing.
All right. I think an important thing to look at now is whenever there's an article that's talking about how bad Bitcoin is, the article is riddled to the gills with misinformation. It's either written by an idiot or it's written by somebody who's trying to spread propaganda.
Most probably. Now there are sources that are look for those sources that are talking bad about something with Bitcoin that advocate Bitcoin. Like those are probably the ones you want to pay attention to, because there's someone that is invested in Bitcoin heavily, and then they're talking about it.
And then the ones that seem positive, that are like, oh, Bitcoin's going to hit, I've seen stuff about it's going to push $1 million in 2018. I've seen stuff that's more like $500,000 and stuff like that. But it's like, okay, but when you're reading these ones that are optimistic, then they all seem, the information that they base it on, I mean, they qualify their statements as speculation. And then the things that they lean on about why are true things. And I kind of feel like right now there's so many people that have bought into the lies. Like, look at Jeff Lawton. I mean, he's a smart man. And it's like, and the stuff that he's referencing is like so riddled to the gills with misinformation that I kind of feel like there's going to be a day where Jeff Lawton's going to say, you know what, I was wrong about Bitcoin. And I everything that I read, I realize now was wrong. And so then how long is it going to be until Jeff Lawton realizes that? Is it going to be 3 months, 6 months, 2 years? But I think that there's tons of people that are going to realize that they've been hoodwinked, and they're going to do an about face. And then they're not necessarily going to go out and buy a bunch of Bitcoin, but they're going to be like, okay, now I don't object to it anymore because I realized what I was objecting to was false information. So then once they're open to it.
There are downsides to Bitcoin, or potential downsides to Bitcoin. But you know what? Those downsides, the Bitcoin, it far outweighs, it's far better than our current economic system. Using cryptocurrencies it's just so much more ethically sound than our current system. Even the downsides, I mean, it's just still far outweighs it, even with those downsides. Some people to take a look at. Jeffrey Tucker is a great advocate of Bitcoin that we'll go through the ups and downs, the positives and negatives. He's a great person to listen to on Bitcoin. And Jack Spirko is another great person to listen to with Bitcoin. All right. There's a ton more to talk about, but man, we're already an hour and a half in, so we're going to end it there. Yeah. Next week, we are going to go through your comments on Facebook and YouTube and all that crap. So
Permies. Have you heard of Permies.com? You've heard of that, right?
Oh, we're going to, okay. So what I was thinking was doing, what I was thinking about doing is comments on Permies like daily. And then comments on like YouTube and stuff like that once every 10 episodes. So every 10 weeks, we'll go through them all. So go and get your comments in now if you want them to be listened to and talked about on the show next week. Good show, man.
Yeah. lots of stuff. Lots of good Smackdown stuff. Lots of good level 5 stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I like about a Smackdown. We're going to really get to the nitty-gritty stuff. So
stick around if you can, if you're lucky enough to stick around. We're going to talk about some stuff off channel, off live, that our special peeps get to watch, and that is Patreon and Permaethos students. You can hang out and chat with us a little more. And check out the PDC, ATC, and Peasant PDC, all having sales right now, and they're about to end. So get on it. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.